Conti, bella palla per Rebic, Ibra, Rebic, il tiro, goal!
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the SempreMilan podcast. I'm your host, Ollie Fisher, joined once again by Anthony Torgrud.
What's up, guys? Obviously, it's just the two of us. It's a holiday here in the U.S., so Madison's driving back from wherever he spent the weekend. John's still at work, but we're figuring the schedule out. We're going to have everyone back pretty soon.
Is it Labor Day? Have I got that right?
I think so, yeah. I don't know. There's a few random Monday holidays that I don't know what you're supposed to celebrate or what you're supposed to do. I just know I don't work. So.
Yeah, but exactly. Take the Monday holiday. So yeah, we've got the troublesome twosome. Stefano is on holiday in Italy. He would normally have filled in at this point, but I hope he has a good vacation and all that. But yeah, just us two to recap what should be a fairly dormant period in news over the international break. You know, the transfer window's just ended. Internationals are on, but there's no really good fixtures. It's like the weird middle phase of World Cup qualifying and all that kind of stuff. So it should be quiet, but it's not. You know, there are a lot of headlines circulating around the club at the moment, which we will come on to. But we've got to start with something that feels like kind of old news now, because we recorded obviously 1 week ago, and it was the day before the end of the summer transfer window. Now, we were talking about what we thought was going to be a done deal, and that was Roman Further coming from Brest. And I said, I'm confident this one gets over the line. The player's not even shown up to go for their game against Strasbourg. We didn't end up with him. We didn't end up with Jesus Corona. We didn't end up with James Rodriguez. We didn't end up with any of the names that we talked about on that particular episode, because at 2 a.m., the night after we'd recorded, our podcast became out of date because the guy that I don't even think we mentioned him last week, but we ended up signing Junior Messias from Crotone. It might be Messias, I don't know, pronunciation, but we'll go with Junior for now, shall we? 30-year-old Brazilian, interestingly. He's the latest in our proud Brazilian heritage, it must be said. Comes from Serie B because Crotone were relegated last season. Comes on loan with option to buy. You look at the stats at face value, he was in an awful team last year. You know, Crotone did not put up much of a fight in terms of getting relegated back to the second fly. But he scored 9 goals and had 4 assists. 13 goal contributions in a side like that is not that bad. You know, it's more than Chiesa was getting at Fiorentina, for example, to put it in perspective. And he's here. And I suppose you got to open up with the romantic element before we come to look at what led up to this point. And that is that 6 years ago, he wasn't even a professional footballer. You know, he was playing semi-pro in the 4th tier in Italy, and he had a job as a delivery man on the weekends. And now he's in a position where he's playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world, a club that he says he grew up supporting, although I swear every new signing of ours says he supported us. It just seems to be a thing. Yeah. And now he's here, and the club put together a good video. His first press conference was really good. And it sort of won me around to the idea that he could be a useful player for us.
Well, I'm glad, because I was on board with it when he got linked to us, about a week ago. Before the end of the window, we were linked with him, and everyone was real upset. And I was kind of like, hey, he's not that bad, actually. And then those rumors died off. I think someone came out and said, we weren't interested. He was offered to us. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Moving on. And then, here we are now, and he's a player. But I think that video release was probably our best announcement video in a couple seasons, to be honest, since probably Zlatan's return. Like I loved it. It was incredible. And like you said, at the very least, it's an incredible story. Being 30 years old, only playing professionally for 3 years now, and already at a team like Milan. I think his body's got a lot less wear and tear than the average 30-year-old. Obviously he's played football growing up, but it was a hobby. It was the equivalent of Sunday League up until 6 years ago when he broke into a Serie D side. So yeah, he's been playing his whole life, but the caliber that he's been playing at doesn't equate to, being a top flight athlete for a decade and a half, that kind of wear and tear. It's totally different. So his body is athletically pretty fresh, and he's probably at the peak of his prime years now. So what we're getting now is probably going to be, the best of him. So I wouldn't expect much development further from him, but also don't expect any regression for at least a season or two. I think he's going to be right where he's at, and I think that's a good spot to be. You look like you said his numbers: 9 goals, 4 assists. That's 13 goals and assists. I know if you look maybe on like Transfer Market or anywhere else, you'll see that he was a center forward and attacking midfielder. But if you look at where he actually played with Crotone last season, he was at right center mid, so just inside of where Salamakers would play in a 5-man midfield. But I think he's going to be that right wing replacement for us. So with that said, looking at those numbers, his 13 goals and assists are equal to Castillejo's entire Milan career with us. I mean, that alone means it's an upgrade. Of course, you have to. Like, everyone's being mad, like, oh, it's only 13 goals and assists. Like, bro, that's better than our backup has ever done. Now, I will say, when you're playing a team like Crotone, you're willing to push forward. You know, you're not sitting back like you do against a big team like us. So it's gonna be more difficult for him to find space. But if you look at his stats, he had the most successful dribbles and step overs out of all Brazilian players last season. I know that's a very niche category, but look at who Brazilians have. They got guys like Neymar, who may not have played much last season, but there are big names and a lot of intense dribblers, a lot of skillful players. So if he's one of the top guys in there, who's to say he can't get around, some of these weak midfields? You look at Juventus's midfield, like, they're a fantastic team, but that midfield's lacking and has been for about a half decade now. And now they're just starting to show the results of that. Messias is going to walk all over those guys. They might not, especially when he starts with us, no one's going to hold him to the standard of a top caliber player. I mean, I think a lot of these players that are established in the top flight are going to be like, yeah, you got a cool story, but you're a Serie D player. And I think he's going to walk all over him. At least for the first few weeks, he's not going to be figured out. And I think it's going to really look good for us. And a lot of people are going to be proven wrong. I'm excited.
I'm glad you are. And after all that, I must add as a footnote that he's come on a fairly low risk, high potential reward deal. The loan fees around about 2.5 mil, and the option to buy would take the whole thing up to 8 million. And for a player who could potentially get double digits in goal contributions this season for us, that is a snip, just like Salamakers was. And you had me thinking then when you said about him being an upgrade on Castillejo. I wanted to compare Messias' last season to Suso's best season for Milan. And Messias outscored him. Suso's best ever season for us had 7 goals in the league, although he did have 10 assists. And that was in 2018-19. I think it just goes to show that he is very much going to be a potent attacking weapon on the right, most importantly, cutting in from the right. Players always have more goal threat when they're cutting in onto a stronger foot. And I will read out the stats because I don't want to get them wrong. So Junior Messias had the most dribbles in Serie A last season. Second most, sorry. Rodrigo De Paul had the most, and Messias was in second. He had the most completed dribbles of any Brazilian player in the top 5 leagues, which is also great. And he also got into SofaScore. I mean, whether you have a preference who scored, Opta, SofaScore, whatever. He got into SofaScore's Brazilian team of the season for the top 5 European leagues. So with all that being said, he's clearly not a nothing player. And as I mentioned, he comes on a kind of low risk deal. The story's good. People are going to get behind him. And I think expectations is a big thing that you touched on there, because he was asked in his first press conference, what do you say to those fans who were expecting a bigger name? Which I didn't know if that was an insulting question.
It
yeah.
is.
Or is it giving him a chance to say, this is why you should back me? And I'm sort of somewhere in between. But anyway, his response to it was very good. He said, I'm not concerned about that. I'm here to do my best for the team now. And I'll show Milan that they should buy me at the end of this, because he acknowledged that he's on loan initially. And I love that. I love it. And I've no doubt that he's going to be working incredibly hard in training to be up to speed for that first Lazio game. Hope he gets some involvement in that. And I just, welcome him. Wish him the best of luck. Not the name that we would expect him, but certainly going to be a useful player, if not a squad player.
It's forward. A name I'm just super happy with. And you look at the versatility of where he can play. He could play backup to Brahim. He could play backup to Kessie. He could play, he could fill that crew neutral. He could even cover Salamakers. And worst case scenario, he starts up top if our 3 strikers are out, like it seems like might be the case against Lazio, but we'll get on to that.
Only us. Only us.
Yeah, week 3, we're already out of all 3 strikers. It's insane.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to do well. I'm really excited for the signing. Another thing that a lot of people were upset about is like, when he leaves, we're going to get nothing for him. Like, it's not the fans' job to worry about our finances and future selfies. Like, you can't expect everyone to be sold for something, but you can expect them to perform. Players are signed to win, not to be sold again. The players that are signed to be sold again are the young players, and we saw that with Jens Petter Hauger last season, and plenty of other players. I can't think off the top of my head, but that seems to be the formula: is sign these young, promising players, let them grow a little bit, and then quick flip them. The older players are there to play. The younger ones are the ones you might see turnover, and I think Tomori might be the most exaggerated example of that. Given the homegrown ability with English players, I bet he's going to be a massive turnaround. I wouldn't expect Tomori to be here 10 seasons. Expect 4 or 5, maybe 6 at most, and then an 80 million move to the Premier League if he's growing still or whatever. However, maybe, I don't know. But I think that's more the plan. So when you sign an older player, know that they're there for immediate impact.
Yeah, and we should be reassured by that as well, because there were actual reports that came out after deadline day from Milan News saying that basically Elliot were not initially keen. They wouldn't sanction the Messias deal, and that implies to me, first of all, that we were pushing for it before deadline day. So we got this guy on our list of targets and said he's worth pushing for. Elliot maybe originally said no, you should go with further because he's younger, and that's fine. They have their project, they have their vision. But then ultimately they were won around, and finally Maldini and Massara got their guy in. And yeah, I just hope that confidence from the management translates onto the field, and this guy just shows what he can do. And I guess now the question is, with the players that we managed to recruit over the summer, some would look at it and say that we didn't actually go out and sign a replacement for Çalhanoğlu, not a natural one anyway, not someone who is an out-and-out number 10, can't really play on the wing. We've actually got a bunch of players who are very versatile in terms of the position that they can play. What happens with the formation is actually arousing is an interesting choice of word. Generating a lot of interest at the moment, because there are multiple sources in the media saying that formation change could be on the cards, or at the very least, we're looking at deploying some other ones in addition to the 4-2-3-1 that we know. We've discussed this at length over the summer as a hypothesis, as in like it might happen, it might not. Now it seems like it could genuinely happen. A 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3, which would have Kessie, Benacer and Tonali all in it, or potentially a 4-3-2-1. What do you see at this current point in time, now the squad is fixed, as our best starting 11, and what system?
I think our best starting 11 it's going to be what we've been using, a 4-2-3-1. I do think, however, that we're going to see mid-game shifts to the 3-5-2. We saw it in the first couple games of the season, and I think we're going to see going forward, especially just looking at our personnel. Both our main strikers are fairly old, so there might be some rotation up there with another player, and having it wider, having to split that responsibility makes sense as far as fitness goes. I think we have a number of strong center backs with Romagnoli coming off the bench. I think you could do that mid to late game with a 3-5-2, and potentially get stronger, if you're defending a lead or sitting back on whatever you got to do. And with Florenzi being signed, it makes a lot of sense that he could play as that right wing back, that right mid. I think right back is actually probably the weirdest position to play, even though that's what he bursts on the scene as. I just think he fits better as a right mid or a right wing back in a 3-5-2. So I think we're going to see a lot of that simply because of that Florenzi signing. I think that one is a lot more key than people realize. And, for someone who was so hyped in Serie A when he first started, and someone who just won the Euro 2020 championship this summer, like, it's kind of flown under the radar. Like, not as many people are hyped about him as they really should be. He's still a European champion. I mean, all
and he
props
played
to
at
Calabria.
PSG last season.
Yeah, he's won a lot of stuff. It's another guy that we brought in that's got some trophies to his name, trophies that no one else has. No one else has a European championship on him. That's a huge one. So I think it's a good idea. Like, I think a 3-5-2 is going to be huge, and I think Florenzi is going to be actually pretty pivotal come this season. I don't think he's going to start over Calabria, albeit maybe a one-off game here and there in the Champions League if we got to switch it up, because it does sound like Pioli's tinkering with, changing formation to better reflect your opponent. That was a criticism that you and I had last season was we were always getting beat by very specific formation matchups, and we weren't adapting to anything. Now it seems like we're going to adapt. We're going to add a couple more formations, but our main one is going to stay the same. It's going to be a 4-2-3-1.
Yeah, couldn't have said it any better myself, to be honest. I do like that we now have this tactical adaptability. I've said all along, been very vocal about the idea that I don't think Ibrahimovic and Giroud starting up front together should ever be a situation. Maybe now with Pellegrini, it becomes just a little bit more understandable because at least we would have a striker to bring off the bench. But I don't really see the same benefits from that as some people are seeing.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you see Zlatan and Giroud up top together momentarily? Like, I was seeing rumors that it might be them together against Juve, and I don't think they start unless it's just like the injury thing. It still seems weird to me, but I could see like when we do that shift, it's we switch to the 3-5-2. I could see Zlatan and Giroud, whichever one's on the bench, coming on for 5-10 minutes as that double partnership, and then the other coming off for like a Rebic or a Leao. I could see them doing that, like a little crossover pairing, just to kind of test the water.
Overlap. I think that there'll definitely be situations within games, and I mentioned that before, where it makes sense to do it. Let's say we need a goal against a team like Cagliari at home last season when it was 0-0 and we needed that goal. Put two men in the box if they're going to give us the wide areas. Let's get the ball wide and cause them problems whenever the ball comes in because you've got two experienced target men centre forwards in the box. I just think that would be a great game
to have Florenzi and Messias also as the right center mid and right mid. I think both of them there with Benacer, Tonali, Kessie, whomever is in the midfield, and then Zlatan Giroud up top. Like you said, if we're getting the wide areas and we need that goal, having both of them there, overlapping each other, dribbling, whatever, and then in swinger, boom, that's a goal every time. I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen the danger of crossing, mostly from our opponents in the first two games. But I think it just goes to show that when you need to go direct, even the best teams in football, they will go direct. I was watching, slightly irrelevant, but it was Liverpool against Chelsea, and Chelsea went down to 10 men and Liverpool were just pumping balls into the box later on. And I just think even the teams with the most cut and dry philosophy, when they need that goal, everybody resorts to the same thing, and that is to just get the ball as close to the danger area as you can. But if we're going to play with two up front in any formation from the start of a game, I would definitely not mind seeing sort of a Ibra / Giroud partnered with Leao / Messias / Rebic. So like, your target man and then your runner in behind.
I like
Messias had a lot of his joy
with
as
Leao.
Yeah, I could see that, definitely.
Yeah.
Leao makes
Giroud's got those cool flicks. Leao does it as well, and he's so fast.
Should have had that assist against Cagliari. That exact thing.
That play,
that's the link up.
That's training ground. Like they've done it before. I guarantee it. They do it again.
Yeah. I could see that, basically, that different combination, because it gives you something from your front two then. And also you do need an aggressive presser if you are going to play with two up front. We know the work rate that Rebic offers in that sense. But I don't know. 4-2-3-1 is definitely going to be the main formation because we've worked on it for so long now. But the adaptability within games can only help us because it was a criticism last season, like you said. And I think it shows Pioli, despite the fact that he's been at countless clubs and he has rather unceremoniously crashed out from most of them, perhaps it shows that even at his age, he's growing as a coach and he's adapting and he's changing and he's working out things that he didn't work out before. And all power to him, I guess. Right, so next topic, renewals. This is fun. So we talked about this briefly last week because we didn't know how credible things were. But we've got Kessié and we've got Romagnoli, both with contracts expiring at the end of the season. Simon Kjær, his contract is also expiring at the end of the season. But it sounds like there isn't going to be much problem in getting a renewal from him, which, he's definitely earned a 1 or a 2 year deal, in my opinion. He's become a bedrock of the side, one of the first names on the team sheet. I don't see why he would want to leave either. So that just leaves really Romagnoli and Kessié. We'll start with Kessié because it's the more difficult one. Sounds to me like him and his agent are moving the goalposts a bit, and I don't agree with it, to be brutally honest. I think that before you could have made a very, very strong argument for give the man his money. He's earned it. If we're giving Ibra 7 million, we should be giving Kessié the same because he's just as important to us, blah, blah, blah. But then once we've offered what he apparently originally requested, it's going up. It's gone up again. It's gone up again. All while clubs from abroad are lining up to supposedly give these lucrative offers. One of the things I've seen today is that PSG are ready and willing to give him 8 million a season plus 2 million bonuses, and Kessié has basically said to Milan, match that. If that's true, I say big if, then that is not acceptable, really, for not an acceptable way to treat a club that has stuck by you, even in the years where you were average. And we've backed ourselves into a corner a little bit with this particular negotiation because Kessié has all the leverage in this situation. He's seen two teammates in Donnarumma and Çalhanoğlu walk out the door for free. He knows it would look terrible on us if we let him walk out the door for free as well. So that gives him the right almost to say, I've got a blank check. I can write whatever number I want, and either you pay me it or you look bad for losing me. Not ideal, especially after the season that he's had, where you can make the argument that he's as important as our top earners. How do we approach this?
I don't know what is true. I don't know what to believe. You see so many reports and none of them necessarily match. They all just kind of take bits of each other and then create their own narrative. And, there may be X amount that are all negative reports, but the numbers are different. The reasoning's different. Kessie said this. His agent said that. We did this. We offered. We didn't offer. It's like, I don't know what to believe anymore. I remember Fabrizio Romano, like 3-4 weeks ago, said it's only a matter of time. We're new before the winter window. And I'm inclined to believe that because it's fab. Why wouldn't I? But everything else is scary. And then remember, it's international window. It's Milan's about to come into a hard stretch. All the Italian journals are the ones saying it's bad. Well, where are all those journals based? Turin, Juve, we're about to play Juve. I mean, it makes perfect sense that there's some type of bullshit being brewed up right before big games. It happens every season, but we are still coming down to the wire, and it's pretty difficult. And everything you said, Kessie does kind of have us by the balls right now. Like, he could basically say, this is my number, match it or don't. And if PSG did say, hey, we're willing to offer you 8 plus 2, and him or his agent said, can you match this? I actually don't have a problem with that so much as if we say, no, unfortunately, we can't afford that. This is the most we could give you. They say, okay, we tried, and then they accept it. Like, if they want to be here, they'll take it and they'll accept the fact that we can't offer these, these 7-digit contract, these 8-digit contracts or whatever. But I don't see an issue with him asking if that's his initial demand, because we saw he wanted 6, and then suppose we offered 6, he's like, actually I want 8, and we offered 8, and he's like, actually I want 10. I don't believe that. I don't. He doesn't seem like the type of guy to be like, oh shit, they agree with me. Let me ask for more then. I don't see him the type of guy to do that, let alone do it twice. That sounds ridiculous. I don't know who his agent is. I don't know anything about his agent, but that sounds like an agent tactic, especially having PSG in there, not so much the player. I think it comes down to it. We might see Kessie get the deal done himself if he really wants to be here over his agent. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of goodwill hunting at this point. I hope he stays around. I don't know for sure. It's interesting. He deserves the money, but if we can't afford to give him that, then we can't afford it. And he needs to either respect and understand that, or say, look, I need to be earning this money. I have a 10 to 15 year window of my career in this game. I'm at my peak. I need to be making money for my future. And I get that, but don't move the goalpost if that's what he's doing.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to unpack in this, which make it a really complex situation, and one that I don't think is actually going to get resolved quickly at all. And the more that the weeks tick by, the more nervous people are going to get, the more the media are going to drum up hysteria. They always do. But definitely his words at the Olympics set the scene for all of this.
Yeah.
If he wasn't telling the truth when he said all of that, I would like to to judge a man on the sum of his actions rather than what he says. But what he said was very concrete. It was, I will sort out my renewal when we get back to Milan. Milan can have me for as long as they want. Those were his exact words verbatim. Yeah. And it is very tough then to imagine any situation where he walks away for free. But as time goes on, all of a sudden the possibility starts to grow in people's heads. Then there's the whole thing of, if his agent is potentially moving the goalposts, are Milan doing the right thing on principle by not biting on this auction that's about to take place? Mm-hmm. And then there's the whole thing that you mentioned. Is it that we can't afford to keep him, or is it that we won't match the offer out of principle? Because we have a wage ceiling that we want to stick to. We won't go above that, especially for a player who is still young, and therefore what will happen? Because there's a knock-on from all this as well, and that is what happens when Benacer comes to the door to negotiate. Same with Teo Hernandez. Players that are equally as important, you could argue, to our starting 11 and to our plans for the future. What about when they want their pay tripling? It becomes very difficult to say no, and next thing you know, you've got an inflated wage bill again. Mm-hmm. Now, this has always been my argument. Not my argument, but sort of my reservation about Elliot's project is it's okay trimming the wage bill, getting in young players on low wages. But if you have an ambition to get back to the top, that wage bill has to inflate again at some point, because your players that you have bought into and developed into top players want to be paid like top players. Otherwise, you lose them. It's that simple.
Right.
Otherwise, we're another Leipzig. Potentially, you could argue another Dortmund, because, whenever they develop a player, they sell them on. And with Kessié, we're in a situation now where, for me, the one thing that cannot happen, and I don't care what we work out to make sure this doesn't happen, he can't leave for free.
Yeah.
If Gigio as a goalkeeper, people say he's worth 30 million in the market, some say he's worth 80 million. There's all kinds of stuff in between. Kessié on the market would be worth north of 50 million. No question about it. Rodri went from Atletico to City for 70 million. That makes me think he's worth that or potentially more. You know? You can't lose that for free. You can't do it. If things have completely broken down by January, you sell him. Unfortunately, that's what you've got to do. If Spurs come along and say, we'll give you Ndombele in a swap deal, I'd be inclined to accept it, purely because then you get a replacement in as well. But just, you've got to get something for the asset, otherwise it looks absolutely terrible. It looks really bad. And then the same goes for Romagnoli, who I suppose we might as well talk about now as well. The interesting thing that's come out today, and I think this changes the landscape quite a lot, is that Daniele Longo said what's actually happened is Romagnoli's not currently earning 3.5 million a year. He's currently earning 6 million a year, because when we renegotiated his contract extension in 2018, it was built in that his wage would rise incrementally. So all those salary charts from 2 or 3 years ago that showed him at 3.5 mil are now out of date, and he's currently earning 6 million net per year, and probably doesn't want to take a pay cut because he's 26. He's heading into that last big contract of his career. He's now found himself on the bench, and he's no longer the acting captain. He might be captain by status, but he never actually wears the armband, right? Because he never plays, he never starts. And he might be looking for a new professional challenge. We have to figure that out. He's another player that we cannot let leave for free. Because you know what will happen. He'll go to Lazio or something, and within 12 months he'll be an Italy starter again. And we'll be looking back on it as another terrible bit of business. Now, the 6 million salary thing makes it difficult, because who's going to want to pick that up for a player who hasn't hit top form for quite a while now? Certainly not Lazio. They're not paying that. I don't even think Lazio would pay him 3.5 million. They operate in a way that, their top paid players Immobile at 4 million. So I don't think they're going to pick up the bill on that either. Again, we're left with
three realistic clubs. I think Inter is least likely, but they would be willing to pay it because they don't care about their wage bill, as evident by their current financial crisis. Juventus, they could afford it and would do it. And I think Chelsea would go back into him. They could pay more than what he's getting now, and it would be a drop in the bucket to them. They've been interested multiple times in the past. I could see that happening as well. I think those are the three most likely places for him to go if this 6 million is true. And I am inclined to believe it. Longo's been pretty spot on all summer. So if he's saying it, it's hard to refute that. However, I do think the incremental thing is a good solution for like players like Kessie. I think that's something that we spoke on earlier, and I was like, yeah, especially if he's earned it. I don't know if this incremental rise for Romagnoli was based on performance, because if it is, there's no way it went up. He just hasn't been good the last season and a half. So if it doesn't make sense that it would be guaranteed rise each season, like that's just too much faith in the player to perform incrementally better every single season. But again, he was our captain. He was one of our most important players.
And that was when Chelsea came in with the offer that we rejected. So maybe
true.
That was our way of saying, look, if you stay around and sign this deal, we'll make sure you're being paid like a Champions League player at the end of it. Now,
the other thing is, you said he's 26. This is literally the prime of his career is beginning right now. He's about to peak. Kier is 32, 31, something like that?
31, yeah.
31. He's on the decline of his career. He's fantastic. He's the out-and-out starter right now. No one's taking that from him. If we're switching to this 3-5-2, we're obviously getting Romagnoli some more game time. Kier going down, Romagnoli going up. Maybe we renew him for 6.5 and give him another incremental thing based on performance. And we just assume that he's going to take back that starting spot from Kier in the next season or two, because Kier's going to start dropping down. We're going to renew him for a year, maybe 2 years at most, and it'll probably be a slight pay cut. So that might make up the difference for Romagnoli, but I think that's the way we got to work it. We can't let him leave for free. I know you have your hypothesis about this gentleman agreement, this free swap with Lazio. I don't trust Lotito to do that at all, and he doesn't have to. Like, he could say, yeah, sure, we'll do that, and then just sign Romagnoli for free because we let him negotiate and then not give us the player. I could see that type of bullshit. That's Serie A for you.
Yeah,
I don't think
true.
that's likely.
Mafia shit.
Yeah.
I will put it out there because I realised that it was in the chat and not. My hypothesis, and this is nothing concrete at all, I just came up with it in my head, is that Milan and Lazio both have a centre-back who's on an expiring contract. As Romagnoli, theirs is Luis Felipe. He didn't have a great season last season, suffered with injuries. But the season before that, he was one of the best centre-backs in the league. I think he actually got into the Serie A team of the season. He was really good. I've always been a fan of him, and that was at the age of 22. He's 24 now. It doesn't look like he's going to renew his contract. So I don't even mean a gentleman's agreement. I would just say to them in January, let's make this happen. And we could do some kind of crafty accounting bullshit like Juve do with their swap deals, where we could say, on the books, we'll give you 30 mil for him, you give us 30 mil for, and then it looks like we've both made a huge capital gain on our player, and all of a sudden we're all happy and we get the player that, something like that, I wouldn't mind. And Romagnoli could be useful in January as some kind of trading chip, but it becomes difficult to do it with 6 months on the deal because teams will just look at it and say, well, we'll wait and get him for nothing. But in that situation, maybe we can do each other a favour. I don't know. But yeah, that is my one, as an overall general point, that is my one criticism, I think, of Maldini, Massara, maybe Gazidis, Elliott. Renewals have not been there. They just have not. Yeah. Whatever the strategy has been.
Because you look at, they didn't get the green light from Messias. They obviously have final say. Their whole thing is youth project, build them up, lower the wages. Like, they need to make money. They're eventually going to sell the club. We all know that that's never been a secret. You look at, they also own. Is it Lille or Leon? Leon.
It was Lille, but not anymore. The owner of Lille owes them money still for bailing
however it was. Regardless, like they always had young players that they were selling quickly. Now Milan's a different caliber club, so you could say they wouldn't do that with us, but they kind of have been. There's nothing to say that they give a shit at all. So I don't foresee that. I think that they're kind of doing that, just like rotating door, build them up, sell them off, and if they don't renew, fuck them out the door. We'll get another kid, we'll raise it, and like they always have this revolving door, and I think that's kind of the Elliott way. So I don't think it's Gazidis, Massara, or Maldini. I think they might be offering it and say, "Is this cool?" And then we all agree, and then give it to Elliott for the final stamp, and they just say no, and that's been the issue, I think.
I almost wouldn't mind it if Maldini was the one who was taking, and I think it's unlikely, like you say, but if Maldini was the one taking the stand saying, no, I'm not seeing the club that I love being taken the piss out of by agents and players who were saying, no, I want this, no, I want more. I wouldn't mind it if they were transparent about it, but then Maldini did come out before the Sampdoria game and basically said that we're operating under the parameters that we're operating under.
Right.
In other words, I have a budget that has been given to me by Elliot and I cannot exceed that. That's what I took from that quote, in which case, fair play. Right, one thing I want to touch on before we do the Lazio preview, Champions League ticket prices. So as a sort of mini backstory to this, we released the Champions League ticket prices for the group stage games. Quite a drastic price hike from the average Serie A home game, it would be fair to say. A ticket in the Curva is usually 30 to 40 euros. They put it up to 140 euros. The most expensive tickets were like 390 euros, I think. Pretty high in relative terms. Me and AJ actually disagreed on this, but the story comes full circle in that Gazidis has come out publicly and said we got it wrong, and we will look into it and we'll come back with prices that are more befitting of the fan base. And the new rumour is that we're basically just going to match what Inter's pricing structure is, and that is around about 40 euros for the tickets in the Curva. So no change there really. AJ, you were I think it'd be fair to say in favour of the club trying to make up for lost time.
Yeah, and it definitely is a heartless point of view. I'm well aware of that. And going back to, I did say that, and that caused an uproar on Twitter, Jesus. But I was actually surprised how many people agreed with me, mainly because it was USA time when I tweeted it, and then I woke up to like the European shitstorm as per usual. It's just cultures are different, and that's why you and I are about to have this debate. But going back to Gazidis' statement, he didn't say we got it wrong. He just said we hear what you're saying, and we'll review it, which is a very political way of saying, all right, fine, but like he's not accepting any guilt. He's just saying like, sure, we'll adjust it. And he didn't say that they were going to look at lowering it. Obviously, that's what they're going to do. They're not going to say, actually, we're going to go even higher. That's never going to happen. That said, I don't think if it wasn't for reaction, they would have changed it. And I don't have any issue with the prices. I know you disagree with me, but I'm going to bring up the NFL thing anyways. Ticket prices for most American sports leagues, be it NFL, NBA, baseball, everything, are substantially higher. So to me, when I see, a 70 euro ticket for the cheapest one, obviously bad seat, I'm like, that's dirt cheap. The highest one you said was 390. That is expensive. There's no way around that. That's expensive. But I mean, it's still like, to me, I'm like, that's not the end of the world for entertainment. This is not shelter.
That's like
this
a
is not
pitch
food.
Side halfway line seat. I mean, that is like a once in a lifetime type experience.
Exactly. And if you're having a once in a lifetime event, like thankfully for me, it won't be a once in a lifetime, but we're flying over. I'm going across the Atlantic. I'm going to get a room. We're going to make a trip out of a vacation. I'm going to get a good seat and I want to be happy. I'm willing to spend more for that. And I think most people understand that philosophy and that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
That said, the middle tier ones, those are the ones for the fans that go often. They want to see the game. They want to watch it as much as they possibly can. I get that. But it's still entertainment. To me, you can't complain about a price. Yes, this is 3 times more expensive than a league game, but it's a Champions League. You're watching, our group alone has 12, 13, maybe 14 trophies, Champions League trophies in it, just our group, like us in Liverpool. It's ridiculous. So it's a big game. And Porto has 2, I believe, don't they?
Yeah, they probably do, yeah. Obviously, Mourinho,
so there's almost just shy of 20 Champions League trophies in our group. I'm willing to pay 3 times more to see that. And maybe some people aren't, that's fine. But it's entertainment. You don't need to go to this. Someone will buy those tickets. So complain or don't. It's either save up, buy the damn ticket, or watch it on TV for free. Those are your options.
Or get a job.
Get a job. That's what I said. That upsets a lot of people, and I don't feel that way with other issues. But when it comes to entertainment, something that's optional, either go to it or suck it up, and I can't go. I can't afford it. How many times have your friends invited you out? You want to do this? And I got to save some money right now. I can't really go. You're gonna cry about it? No, you just
I go into my overdraft.
I'm I'm not missing out. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. No, I mean that is. I mean, I know that the way you worded it was as a hot take, but the get a job thing is interesting. Italy is, just for context, for full context and disclosure here, Italy is a much poorer country than quite a lot of the.
It's also the most unemployed country in Europe. Like, that's not invincible. That's literally true. I think they had the highest unemployment rate.
Yeah, so them and Spain.
That's where the thing was coming from.
Yeah, they struggle. So there are a couple of things that piss me off. So the first thing is people comparing it to Premier League ticket prices. I don't really understand the logic in that, because the Premier League is obviously the richest league in the world. But aside from that, the Premier League have been absolutely chastised in the media, by British media, by our own media, for having obscene ticket prices. An Arsenal season ticket will set you back thousands of pounds, and nobody wants to go and watch that. Even West Ham, now they've moved to their new stadium, you have to pay like thousands of pounds to get a season ticket. Don't point at English ticket prices and say, well, they're doing that. We should point at English ticket prices and laugh. And it's the same with American sports. I know that you're used to paying the $300 for a courtside seat or to go see an NFL game. If you were to look at it in relative terms, let's say that $300 ticket became a $600 ticket for no apparent reason, just because it was a slightly bigger game. Well, if you look
at it does.
Yeah. Well, that I don't think that would go down particularly well. It would at least be met with some opposition, especially if this particular franchise had years of shit like we've had as a club. Then you look at the Curva Sud, for example, who are the hardcore of our fan base, without a doubt. Those are the fans you want to keep on side, because if they're not on side, you will very quickly know about it. And you want to tell them they've got to pay over 3 times more to see the game that they've been waiting years to see. And that after 18 months that have probably been very hard on some of those fans, I'm really lucky. I kept my job during the pandemic, and a lot of the people around me did. But a lot didn't, in other countries that are not as fortunate as us. The reason that unemployment rate is high is because of that. So we could all make assumptions and say, well, if you want it, you just buy it. It isn't quite as simple as that. And I can understand why there was that outrage. I firmly believe that that the fan movement in certain countries in European football is basically all we have left until fans are completely eradicated from the game. You've seen the way that they're taking the piss out of fans in England. We all point at the German fan model. Well, I say we all. A lot of people point at the German fan model and say they've pretty much got it spot on. Fans own 51% of the club, not in like share terms, but they have a say on what decisions are made at the club. And people like that because it stops fans getting fucked over. They have a cap on ticket prices, which I think is fair. And to the argument, well, you want us to sign big name players, but you won't pay extra for tickets. Well, it has little substance, because if you look at a breakdown of our revenue, particularly in those seasons where we were struggling and gate receipts weren't the best, it makes up such a small percentage of our overall revenue, does gate receipts. Now, over the last 18 months, we haven't had any gate receipts, and I get it. The club have got to kind of make up for lost time. I read a report saying that we were actually targeting making 4 to 5 million euros from each of our Champions League home games in ticket sales. Now, that certainly adds up. But wait until I tell you that we have to give 7.5 million of that back to the city council.
I think that was the stadium. The money they wanted was on top of that. I think they were talking the final amount.
Well, because I saw 7.5 million a year.
Right, we do pay 7.5 million to the council, absolutely, and that's why it's so important to get our own stadium. That's why Elliot's been preaching it. The Chinese are preaching it, Berlusconi was preaching it, and the city's been against it because they make so much fucking money. But I saw the breakdown of our 18-19 season. I believe that was the last one with full fan allowance. The total amount that we brought home before we gave the council was 26.9 million euros. Mm-hmm. Now you take 7.5 out of that. That's enough to renew Donnarumma, renew Kessie, renew Romagnoli. There's your problems right there. So it is maybe not the giant big number that we're thinking, but it is a substantial amount. And I see it all the time. Like, we're not going for the big names. We're being stingy on all this. And then it's like, I don't want to pay this money to support the team, but you better buy these players. It's like, where do you think this money's coming from? And I appreciate that that's a small amount of it. I understand that, but it's still an amount of it. And without that, you're shrinking the budget so much. You're upping the debt. You're upping everything negative. So I do think it's important, especially when you look at, I bought, for example, a shirt this season, 170 euros. That's what it cost me to get a shirt with a name, some badges, and ship it to me. And that's insane for a t-shirt. But that's the price of a ticket, and if I want to, what's more important to you, watching the game live, having that experience, or in the t-shirt? We're willing to buy that shirt once or twice a season, but we won't pay that to go to the game, to watch it, to support them in person. It makes no sense to me. And then you get there and there's concessions, like you're going to spend a little more, but it goes to the club. Maybe not all of it, but we're not going to get our own stadium unless we're giving that support, unless we're showing that we could put asses in seats and we have a reason to build a new stadium, because fans will show up. They want to be there. And you look at Spurs and West Ham, like you said, they raise the prices because they have to pay for that stadium. And I think all the fans understand that, even if they're mad about it. But it's just the way it goes. You don't expect someone to build something and then not get their money back. It's a business. It's a company. Apple doesn't release a new phone at a loss every season or every year. They release a new phone at an increase so that you buy it, and then they pay off the research, the construction, the development of that phone, and then they make profit. That's just the way money works. So,
but then I agree with that. We need a new stadium. But I would also be far more accepting of it if that's when we decided to raise the prices, was when it's a new stadium that needs paying for and there's a different experience, a better experience for the fan. Mm-hmm. San Siro is a shithole. Like, it's a beautiful, iconic stadium, it gives me goosebumps every time I see it, but it is a horrible experience for fans. I'm
sure if fans saw those pictures of the bathrooms at the Sampdoria Stadium going around, like, San Siro's not much better. It's still pretty grungy as well.
And I mean, I see what you're saying about proving that we show up and support. But out of the first 2 rounds of Serie A, so everyone's played a home game, we've got the highest home support, and it's by some margin. Like, there were 41,000 tickets for Inter again. No, sorry, 39,000 tickets available for Inter against Genoa. They just won the league. You would think there would be a bit of hype for that game, first game of the season. They only sold 27,000. We had over 32,000 there for the Cagliari game. So, where the fans came out, they showed their support. And I mean, we could go on all night about this, and I totally understand where you're coming from on that, about, the money going back to the club and about how it's a boost to match day revenue that we've missed out on over the 18 months. There's no two ways about that. That is a big hole in our budget at the moment. But I think that the us as fans who might go once or twice a season at most are probably not in a position to tell regular stadium going fans how they should feel about their ticket prices being tripled. That's just the way. If they want to protest about it, we should probably look at it and think, well, they clearly see some kind of problem with it. And the Curverswood came out and they explained it, and they said that, we urge you. They didn't say we're going to protest, none of us are coming. They just said we urge you to reconsider, in kind of like a plea, basically.
Yeah, and it's probably the calmest plea they've ever given.
Yeah, and the new prices haven't come out yet, but let's say that they are in line with Inter's. Those are still above the normal match day ticket prices, so there'll still be a nice boost in revenue. Yeah. If perhaps before we were targeting 5 million per game from the Liverpool Atletico, we might end up raking in around the 3 million mark, and you might say, well, that's lost revenue, and it is, but I'd rather it be full. And you might say the tickets will sell out regardless. Price elasticity of demand, I don't think works the same in Italy and in poorer European countries as it does in the UK, in the US, where you have a city like London where there's 9 million people here. You'll find people who will go and watch West Ham and Spurs and pay that money. You'll find people who
watched that game, actually.
There you go. who go and watch their local NFL team because, that's their city. That's what they like to do. In Italy, I think it's different. I think football in these countries in Europe has and will always be for the quote-unquote working man. And we shouldn't lose touch of that. We really shouldn't, because it's a release for a lot of people. And I'm just glad that there's going to be some kind of happy medium found between where the fans are at and where the ownerships are. And I hope all this disagreement that we've seen just drives us towards saying we need a new stadium, because every penny counts now. And that's it.
I think that would be a lot, like, it would go over so much easier. It'd be a lot less outrage if they said, either initially or after the Curva made their statement, that they said, look, we understand this is a price hike, but this is why we have to do it. Lost revenue. We want our own stadium. We want to get the books and zeros so that we could afford these big players. If they just justified it with all the reasons that we all know they're doing it for, if they just said, we understand, but here's why we have to do it. Please support us with this. You know, we're a team, we're a family, blah, 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 all that. We are AC Milan, you know. I think fans would be like, okay, we get it. But because they just said, here's your ticket prices, don't look at your bank, you know, then people are like, yo, what the fuck? And I understand that feeling like they just pulled a fast one on you. I just think at the end of the day, it's like, what do you expect? That's kind of my point.
Because he just said, and
also just the constant complaining about everything, whether it contradicts your previous complaint or not, more so than it is the ticket prices to me.
Yeah, I think if you sort of stand in the camp of, we're working with a restricted budget, this is why we've ended up with this player, you know, but then you see people are in the camp of, why did we not sign a bigger name playmaker? And then they're like, you know, the club are being stingy, but then all of a sudden you realise, you look at the accounts, they're not in great shape. It is what it is. But just to skim over the quotes, Gazidis did say we're still facing difficult situations due to the pandemic, suffered a lot from the absence of an audience at the stadium for 18 months. Ticket sales are an important part of this equation. We try to find a price balance, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Then he says, in this case, I've clearly understood your concerns and I realise we are not aligned in the balanced way that we want. Therefore, we've reassessed our decision and will adjust the prices of Champions League matches to a level we believe is correct. We believe. You believe the previous level was correct. But anyway, it is what it is.
And I do think it would make more sense because the Champions League is UEFA's tournament. If UEFA just had set prices, there would be no argument about it. Now, I understand that will price out a lot of the smaller clubs, like especially the Eastern European ones, because UEFA is going to be like, oh, all these tickets are worth, you know, €5,000. Like, they're going to say more. But if UEFA just said, like, this is a set price for Champions League games, you don't get a choice, there would be no quarrel because this is what we have to do.
Price cap, even a price cap, I think would work well.
A price cap would be good as well. But then, I don't know, then you're putting the price on, like, yeah, exactly.
And what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, yeah, there are no saints in this situation, because I was looking into something for a friend of mine who works for Football Supporters Europe, and he made me look into like how it works for away games in the Champions League for teams in Italy. With Juventus, in order to secure an away ticket for a Champions League game, you have to buy their travel package, which includes flights and a hotel. Now, that is disgusting.
That's awful.
Grim. Yeah. Now, sometimes I guess we don't realise how good we have it. But on a final point on that, I'm just glad that the club actually listened to fans. I guess it shows that we maybe are a bit more in touch than some of the others. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. It was fun discussing that one anyway. Lazio preview and then a couple of quick questions. So Sunday night back in Serie A action. Giroud has COVID, so get well soon, Olivier. Sounds like because he has to isolate 10 days regardless, he's not going to be available for that game. Of course, Ibra's only just back in training and won't be fit. And of course, Pellegrini is not yet 90 minutes fit. So AC Milan currently have 3 strikers under contract, and we will start with a winger up front against Lazio.
I just want to point out and say, put the big L on my forehead, because all summer, your argument was, what if we have an injury crisis? And I'm like, we got 3 great strikers. We won't have them. We don't need another one. It took 2 weeks.
We need another 2. We needed 3. Get Colombo back.
It's typical. Worst case scenario, we could recall him, but it's a crappy thing to do.
Yeah.
I think Giroud will be back relatively soon because he's vaccinated, and I don't know, I feel like the regulations change every week now. I thought it was just have a negative test and then he was good to go. Is it now?
He's allowed to take a new test at the weekend, apparently.
Okay.
Now, I don't know why. I wish I could explain it, but I couldn't even understand how the rules work here, let alone trying to translate Italian.
Right.
But yeah, it sounds like he's out of the game. Whatever it is, they've decided he's out. Whether it's because you're still considered to be contagious in attending. I don't know. I don't know how it works.
I think for him it was because he tested positive, and then there was like a 2-day window or something before your next test. And if you were to be negative, then it was like you're just good to go. But since he was still positive 2 days later, then there's a waiting period or something like that. And I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Probably am. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend like I read every nation's regulations on it, but yeah.
I'll go ahead with this one and say I think that I'll touch on Lazio. So they hired Maurizio Sarri this summer. I thought it was a really good appointment for them, to be honest. He loves playing with that centre forward, so he can build the team around Immobile. I like his style of football. He doesn't always manage to get it to work. Like at Juve, he quickly settled into let's just get results mode. But with this Lazio team, I think he knows that his reputation's kind of on the line with this job, and therefore he's sticking to the stuff that got him into that position. That is evidenced by the fact they've scored 9 goals in their first 2 games so far this season, conceding 1 in each. So they beat Spezia 6-1 in the last round. Now, we know Spezia are probably relegation candidates / favourites at this point. The Thiago Motta experiment, I think, is going to crash and burn again, just as it did at Genoa. But I look at their team front to back, and does this not read like a team from maybe 10 years ago? They've got Pepe Reina in goal, Lucas Leiva in midfield. This is like an early 2010s Liverpool team. But they've got Felipe Anderson wide on the left, who I swear was good at Lazio 10 years ago. Maybe 5 years ago. Pedro on the right wing, again, Barcelona 10 years ago, maybe. And then you've got Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, who had his best spell 5 seasons ago, which seems like a bloody long time ago now.
Oh, do we want to talk about him, that little tidbit that came about us and him?
Yeah, why not? So, who was it? Mauro Suma.
Mauro Suma confirmed that we had made it an offer of 120 million euros for him under the Chinese, and Tito just said no.
Leonardo,
yeah.
So it was summer 2018 when we'd fucked it that season, and basically Leonardo said, "I've got no ideas, just throw money at the best midfielder in the league."
Yeah, that's wild. I think Sarri is the best appointment for him. I thought they were going to have a slow start, and they would obviously hit the ground running. But like you said, Thiago Motta Spezia is probably the worst team in the league next to Cagliari. I think they were pretty god-awful as well. And then they also played Empoli, who just came up. So, I mean, they haven't played anyone yet. And if there's one thing we know about Ciro Immobile, he's a flat-track bully. He shows up and he stat pads the fuck out of all these relegation sides. And then he goes and draws 3 blanks on the international break for Italy. Like, he's not that great, you know? Yeah, he doesn't do well in big games. And I'm actually fully confident, even without a striker, I think we're going to win this game, to be honest with you. I just don't see anything from them that says this is a special team. And that's crazy to say about a team that scored 9-2. You know, like, it doesn't make any sense. But I just don't think they've done anything. I think they're doing very well against sides that you're going to do well against no matter what. And now they're going to face us, and it's their first real test as a side to see how they're settling in with Sarri's tactics, you know, because they're always going to look good against sides that don't know how to do anything, especially a side that's trying to figure out Motta's tactics versus a side like us who's had consistency, that's been at the top level. And we still got that 3-0 defeat from last season fresh in our mind. Like, we're going to get one back. And I think we do. I think this is going to be a tough win, but I'm going to go with the 2-1 win.
Oh, yeah, I like the optimism. It doesn't feel like we ever batter Lazio at home. We often lose away, but apart from 3-0 win in 1920, whenever it was, I'm actually more encouraged because the last couple of times that we've been beaten by Lazio at home, Joaquin Correa scored the goal. He's no longer there. Unfortunately, he's at Inter, so we'll tackle that nearer the time. But I think the starting 11 for this, as an aside, kind of picks itself. I think that we should revert to the 4-2-2-2 that we played when we didn't have Ibra fit last season, just because we seem to look a bit better like that. So, you know, I would keep the back four the same as what it is. If Kessie and Benacer are both fit, they obviously start the game, because you could do with them being even more of an anchor if you're taking out that number 10 position. Then you probably have Salamanca's wide on the right, so it can tuck into like a 4-4-2. And then I would probably have Brahim Diaz in that sort of left attacking midfielder role, hovering in and around the spaces that he does. And I'd put Rebic and Leao up front. Now, it might be listed in a formation like Leao's on the left wing, Rebic is up front, but we saw how it functioned in those games. Those two were kind of feeding off each other. Yeah, and I would like to see that. I think that should be the 11, providing nobody else is fit enough to start the game. And then I think the strategy should be obvious in that you give Ibra 30 minutes in that Lazio game, and then you give him 60 minutes from the start against Liverpool. If you can do that, if that's within it, then you just ramp up his recovery that way.
Do we think Giroud will be back for Liverpool or no?
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. But because he's missing training, I mean, I know he's keeping fit at home, but it's not the same. You know, he's not in there doing the actual drills and stuff. Because I don't think he'll start against Liverpool.
Positive. He didn't
asymptomatic,
Yeah, okay, so he'll be fine.
He'll be fine. I just worry about the game preparation. Let's say he only goes in on Monday. He's not going to start against Liverpool the next day because he's not been in for
But then again, he's played him more than any other player on our team.
Maybe he could. Maybe he'd be fresher. I don't know. And you're right. He knows them. They're a familiar opponent. But I'll leave that one to Pioli. Questions?
Yeah. Oh, what's your prediction for the game?
Yeah, good point. Now, I think Sarri's going to do good things with Lazio this season. I think I've picked them to finish 5th in my predictions, just outside. I think their squad depth's going to let them down. This game, I was going to match you with a 2-1, but given our gung-ho style against Cagliari, I'm going to go 3-1 and hope that it's going to be another multi-goal thriller. That would be nice. Just a win to set us up for the 2 crucial games after as well would be great. Adi asks, I fear our young and inexperienced squad at Anfield. What do you guys think about that? We will obviously preview the Liverpool game in a week's time, but just looking ahead to that game, depends on Liverpool's injury situation. I think that players are dropping like flies for them again. But do I fear it? Yes, because that's probably the hardest game on paper in the group, and it's our first game back for 7 years, and we do have a young squad, and we might not have one of our 2 experienced strikers. It could be tough. You know, it could be a comfortable defeat. That's the way that I'm thinking about it at the moment, and anything else is a bonus. But then we went to Manchester United when we were expected to lose at Old Trafford, and we came away feeling gutted that we didn't win that game. So who knows? Maybe this is our time to spring a surprise back on the big stage.
Yeah, it's going to be hard.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know. But I do think there's a surprise that can happen. You know, I think if Zlatan's ready, he could give that team talk that'll get him feeling like, you're right, this is the biggest game of our lives so far. Because it is for every player outside of Giroud and him. This is the biggest game of their career. And I think they're going to be ready for it, especially if Kessie's back. He's going to be ready to prove it, especially if he's putting himself in the shop window. He's going to try and prove it. Benacer, Tonali's going to want it more than anyone's ever wanted anything in their life. And I think Zlatan's, this is his final hurrah. Might be his last season of football. The only thing he hasn't won is the Champions League. So maybe he pushes harder than you've ever seen before and we make it happen. I don't know, but it'll be tough.
I think that game in particular, again, we will preview it next week. Keep it tight for as long as you can. If it's 0-0 after 60 minutes, then it's one of them when it becomes anyone's game, set pieces, that kind of thing.
You might see that 3-5-2 actually from the start in that, to be honest.
Yeah, potentially, because that would be a matchup that we could play. Rock Award. Can Tonali and Bakayoko properly replace Kessié and Benacer in the starting 11?
I literally forgot we signed Bakayoko.
Yeah. That was made official.
I think they could, and they probably will start some games because we're going to be rotating a lot more this season. I don't think we have. We do have a set best 11, but I think you're going to see a lot more rotation this year just because there's so many competitions and everyone is about on that same level. Obviously, some are clearly better than others, but I don't think the gap is as wide as it's been in the previous few seasons.
Yeah, I like them as a pairing because they will function in a similar way. Bakayoko is finally a natural deputy to Kessié in his obviously his physical attributes, and I would play him slightly deeper. And then Tonali and Benacer, I think those two are actually probably the closest match. I like it when Tonali gets on the front foot and starts dribbling and driving forward. I think that when you plonk him in front of the back four, yes, that's what he was used to at Brescia, but he makes more mistakes closer to goal. So I like you give him the ball when he needs to start an attack, and I think I think that he functions better that way. And then you think about it and you're like, oh, that's exactly how Benacer works as well. So yeah, I think it could work, and I think it will work. The midfield depth is really good as well, I must add.
Mm-hmm.
Krunic, who stepped in admirably in those first 2 games, is now down to 5th choice, bless him. And yeah. So, can Milan win the Champions League this year? That's from Mohamed Aran. I'm going to say no. I think it's a step too far. Making it out of the groups would be a win. That considering the opponents that we've drawn, it would be a win. I said when we were discussing the draw that I think this is a good test of where we're actually at in our project, where we are as a club, just like the Man United game was in the Europa League. If we'd have got a rubbish group and gone through, it'd have been a bit like, we're still through, but the tests come after this. We've got the tests now, and no, I don't think we can win the Champions League this year.
I'm gonna say yes, actually. Because otherwise, why do we play the game? If it's impossible for us to play, if it's impossible to win, then why are we playing? So yes, there's a chance. How big is that chance? Very small, very, very small. So don't count on it. But I've seen crazier things. Well, I've seen crazy things, but yeah, Porto. That was a big one.
Monaco got to the semi-final. Malaga got to the semi-final.
Yeah, Tottenham was in a final. I mean.
Oh God!
What can't happen? Yeah.
I will read this out. This isn't a question, but a comment, and people are agreeing with it. Milan need to stop romanticising their players' intentions and start acting like a business. Kessie should be renewed at whatever his number is and sold immediately after. Interesting one.
That's a very interesting take, because to me, that's doing both of what you mentioned. I don't think we are romanticizing our players' intentions. I think we are acting like a business. And that's why people are walking, because we're not going to bite. Now, I do see what you're saying about renew with their number and sell them, but it depends on their number. What if it's too high and we can't sell them? What if we get an offer, we agree to it, and then the player's like, no, I'm not going to take that. I'm making more here and I'm on the bench or whatever, I think we are acting more like a business than romanticizing things, but I think we romanticize things when it looks bad in the fans' eyes, like signing Messias. But we act like a business on other stuff when it's like, let Gigi walk. But
I will close on saying that there are 5 comments all saying renew Kessie and selling. I wonder if we talk about how the fans perceive a certain player, have the bridges already been burned? Are people no longer pro Kessie? The Presidente thing's gone out the window all of a sudden. It's just a reminder, I guess, of the fickle nature, not only of football players and agents, but also fans, I guess. They believe things in the media and they turn just like that. But I hope that we come back in a week with a more positive update on the way that everything's going, because if we keep him with a stronger squad for it. In the meantime, I think that's pretty much everything. We've somehow gone over an hour, despite the fact that it's only 2 of us, but that's mostly my fault. International break and all that, got to ramble about some stuff. But yeah, I've been your host, Ollie Fisher. You can find me on Twitter at Ollie Fisher. It's on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. And AJ?
Yeah, my stuff's on screen as well. I don't know if we've publicly announced it or not. It doesn't really matter, but we're going to San Siro in January. Myself, Oliver, Madison, and potentially Gianni hasn't booked yet, but all the others have bought their tickets. So SempreMilan meetup in January. Go to the game if you want. And UEFA have lifted the away fan ban, so I now might be going to Anfield next Wednesday. So if I am, we will have. Yeah, I'll pay it. Because I have a job. No, now that's a joke. So I might have live content from the stadium. But yeah, and in the meantime, like, comment, subscribe. That would be fantastic. Follow us on all the social medias, and we'll catch you in a week's time. Hopefully we have a win to recap. Thank you very much for watching. See you in a week.
Conti, bella palla per Rebic, Ibra, Rebic, il tiro, gol!